we can get started. First of all, hello everyone. Welcome to today's session. I hope you all are doing well. In today's session, we'll be focusing on SLO-driven incident response. And while we do that, we'll also understand how SLOs or service level objectives help you do better incident management and enhance your service delivery process. So let's quickly get started. Okay, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. I'm Vishal. I'm the senior content lead at Squadcast. I'll be the host and the moderator for today's session. And if you have any questions or queries, make sure you put those in the chat. Now, we've unfortunately disabled our chat, so you'll have to use our Q&A section and make sure you put all your questions there. So once they're there, I'll ensure that our other panelists answer those for you. We also have Anusha with us on this call, who is the product manager at Squadcast. She has been responsible for bringing together quite a lot of features that you see with Squadcast today. One of those also includes the SLO tracker. Then we have Akash, who is the senior solutions engineer, and he has been involved in interacting with various customers and stakeholders across the globe. So he is the one who will be taking care of the demonstration part that concerns the use case that we have put together for you. So let's quickly get started and take a look at the key takeaways or the agenda that we have for today's session. We'll start off this session by understanding the basics of SLOs or service level objectives, where we'll talk about what those are and how they influence SLO-driven incident management. Then we'll move on to understand the role of SLOs in contributing to decision-making that concerns data-driven decisions. Then we'll move on and talk about how SLOs aid in prioritizing incidents based on the impact that they can have on your business. And finally, like I mentioned, we have a case study where we'll be talking about some challenges that concern SLO-driven incident management, and also talk about how Squadcast helps you address those with its SLO management and tracking capabilities. Now that the agenda is out of the way, let's quickly get started. Okay. So before I start talking about SLO-driven incident management or response, I'd like to talk about site reliability engineering. Site reliability engineering in general focuses on ensuring that your services or systems stay up 24/7, right? The current need of the market, that is always wanting to ensure that services are always available to the customers or end users. Just like using WhatsApp, right? We don't want our WhatsApp to go down and probably create problems for anyone. So that is what site reliability engineering also does. It takes in a mix of practices and ensures that different team members, maybe your ops team or your DevOps practices and DevOps teams, they come together to basically define certain set of practices that can help you in ensuring that your services or systems stay up and running. You can scale them at will, and also automate certain practices that you do not want your team members to go ahead and implement manually. So that is what site reliability engineering is all about. And when you talk about site reliability engineering, you need to look into certain terms like your SLAs, SLOs, and SLIs. So what exactly are these terms, right? So when you talk about SLAs, these are nothing but your agreements or the promise that you make to your customer as a service provider, and ensure that there would be certain levels of services that would be offered to the respective customers, right? And when it comes to quantifying these services, you assign certain level of indicators to them, also called as service level indicators, which can be defined to suit your requirements. And then this can be used to quantify the efforts that are being put in to meet those agreements. Next, you have the SLOs or your service level objectives. These are nothing but specific performance targets that your organizations can set in to ensure that the service level agreements are met. And this is done by aligning your team members so that they can keep track of efforts that they put in and then measure the efforts in accordance with the agreement that has been put together. So this was about the metrics that concern site reliability engineering. Talking about SLO-driven incident response, it is nothing but a process that helps you align your SLOs with your incident management processes, be it acknowledging your incidents, escalating it, or resolving it, right? It is not just the practical implementation of this alignment, but it also focuses on a broader area where you would also want to consider pointers like, are you meeting the right user expectations? Are you meeting your business outcomes, and are they resulting into happier customers? So that is what service-driven incident response is all about. I will now let Anusha take it forward and add value to this discussion further. Hey, Anusha, why don't you take it forward?
Sure. Thanks, Vishal. So far, Vishal briefly went over what SLIs, SLOs, and SLAs mean, how they are related and dependent on each other, and what having them be a part of your process means. Now, let's move on to understanding certain challenges that are associated with bringing in SLOs into your processes. So, most organizations who are looking to introduce a proper incident management process and a set of workflows for it, or who are looking to improve their already existing processes, typically face these challenges, right? So, let's understand a few of these challenges. First and foremost issue is the lack of optimum monitoring functions where business critical metrics are not tracked. They're not tracked, they're not analyzed. So teams end up spending um, time on false positives also way too often. There are no centralized dashboards that have been set up, or if they're set up, they're not being maintained. And, hence, during a fire, on calls are having to switch between multiple tools and contexts, right? So they have to have multiple screens up at all times to make sense of what is really happening at the time of an outage. So this also leads to lack of overall service health view when multiple either dependent or independent services have been impacted as a result of an outage. Another set of issues are around the processes themselves, where teams generally lack the ability to have clear and transparent communication during an outage, and or documented conversations, which lead to poor collaboration between teams or within the members of a particular team. And this could also result in something more serious that needs to be concerned about, which is repeated efforts for recurring incidents, right? So the team is doing too much. Another common issue with teams who have incident management processes in place and are also tracking SLOs is the ability to decide the SLO trade off. Now, what is SLO trade off? It simply means that what output velocity can a particular team have without having downtime beyond a certain threshold, right? So if the team is too conservative, then the developer velocity is reduced, which in turn affects business. But if the team is extremely active, then there's always a higher risk of encountering downtime, right? So identifying the sweet spot or the trade-off point is what most teams find very difficult. So now we've covered the basics as well as the challenges associated with bringing in SLOs into your existing processes. I think now it's the right time to dive a little bit deeper and get better at understanding this. So the primal question, right? What is SLO-driven response? It simply means that teams should factor in the impact on business, customer success, user experience, as well as service quality, in addition to obviously the primary goal of being reliable and mitigating incidents as soon as possible. Now, one of the core principles being focus on customer centricity, this shifts the focus from simply resolving incidents to actually mitigating their impact on end users and customers, right? So it ensures that incidents that directly affect user experience are given a higher priority and immediate attention, which leads to improved customer satisfaction. By incorporating SLOs, organizations can proactively identify and address potential issues before they escalate into actual full-blown incidents. This enables teams to take preventive measures and maintain a higher level of system stability. Utilizing available resources optimally is also made possible by SLOs. Now, incidents that have a greater potential to breach SLO thresholds should be given higher priority, right? This helps in ensuring that your critical issues are resolved promptly, while your less critical issues are addressed in due course. Not every issue that occurs has the same priority at your end. So this makes the whole process of who needs to work on what and when very, very easy to set up. SLOs also provide a clear framework for prioritizing incidents based on their potential impact on service quality and user experience. SLOs guide decision making regarding allocation of resources, the escalation paths or the escalation channels, and the communication efforts needed for quick collaboration. In addition to all of this, it also provides a quantitative means of understanding incident management effectiveness. What this means is that teams can analyze how well they have maintained service levels during incidents, and this helps them identify areas of improvement and refinement during the incident response process. Organizations can also leverage this SLO-driven incident response as a feedback loop for continuous improvement. Now, by analyzing the incidents that have occurred and the impact that they had on the SLOs that have been set up, teams can identify patterns, if any, right? And based on this, they can make informed decisions and implement changes that lead to overall service enhancement. SLOs are often aligned with business goals and objectives, as we have understood so far. So this ensures that incidents are assessed not only from a technical standpoint by teams, but also in terms of their potential impact on revenue, the business reputation, and the outcomes that have been outlined for the business itself. Now, with this, another benefit is it promotes transparent communication with stakeholders. This enables teams to provide more accurate and meaningful updates on incidents, explaining their impact on the service levels and the estimated resolution times. A very important aspect of this method of incident response is documentation and reporting. So documenting incident outcomes and the resolutions with a focus on how SLOs were impacted and restored. That's the most important part. And including SLO-based metrics and reports to demonstrate how effective your incident management efforts were. So this whole aspect of documenting and reporting is very, very crucial. Okay, so doesn't all of this bring a question to your minds? Does all of this always have to be reactive? Isn't there a possibility that incident response could be proactive? So the answer obviously is yes. And this is what I will be speaking to you all about now. Let's take a look at how teams can be proactive in predicting the occurrence of an incident by implementing SLO monitoring. Step one is a no-brainer. Teams actually have to start with setting up SLOs, right? So teams need to understand what metrics actually matter to them. It's not just the metrics that matter, it's also the thresholds that need to be identified and set for them. SLO thresholds play a critical role in helping with detection of incidents. So these thresholds facilitate proactive monitoring. Instead of waiting for user complaints or major service disruptions to occur, incident response teams can detect and address issues in their early stages, preventing incidents from escalating unnecessarily. Now, let's take a look at a few benefits that having right SLO thresholds bring with them, right? So these thresholds represent the acceptable performance boundaries for any service. By continuously monitoring the service metrics against these thresholds, deviations from the expected baseline can be quickly identified. Such deviations may actually indicate the occurrence of an incident or a future potential issue. Thresholds act as an early warning system. When specific metrics breach their designated thresholds, automated alerts are triggered, and this notifies incident response teams or the most relevant teams that something is going wrong. It requires your attention, so please take a look at it. So consistent monitoring of SLO thresholds can help identify certain patterns or trends, right, which might lead to potential incidents. So when there are metrics that consistently approach or breach thresholds, it could indicate an actual underlying problem that needs investigation by teams and resolution before a full-blown incident occurs in the future. So, in addition to what we discussed, right, thresholds also provide context to detected deviations. So, incident responders can quickly assess the severity of a situation based on how far the metric has deviated from the set threshold. So, this context also helps in prioritizing the incident response efforts that are needed. SLO thresholds also allow incident responders to differentiate between minor fluctuations and genuine incidents. So, only deviations that breach the predefined SLO thresholds are treated as incidents, whereas others are probably just potential issues or issues with lesser priority. What this also does is it reduces the false positives, right? The number of false positives, and in turn, it helps in prevention of unnecessary response efforts that teams need to put in. Now, when these thresholds are consistently approached or breached, incident responders can take proactive measures to prevent incidents. These might involve implementing temporary fixes, any sort of load balancing across different environments, and or any other basically relevant preventive actions that make sense, right? So, incident response teams can also make data-driven decisions based on SLO thresholds. How? Basically, actions and responses can be guided by the severity of the breach and its impact on meeting the performance targets. So, monitoring SLO thresholds can reveal opportunities for performance optimization, and addressing metrics that frequently approach or breach thresholds can actually lead to overall improved service quality. And of course, let's not forget, with thorough SLO monitoring and tracking in place, teams gain clarity on how escalations and workflows can be set up for different categories of incidents based on SLOs. All right, we have covered a lot up until here, and I hope you all are still with me. So I'm just going to go on for a little bit more. All right. So, quick and efficient incident resolution prevents further SLO breaches. So, there are a few practical tips, important tips for achieving timely service restoration by managing your SLOs well, right? So, let's take a look at them now. To start off with, prioritize incidents based on SLO impact. What this means is identify your incidents breaching SLO thresholds and prioritize based on severity and the potential SLO impact that they have. Next, have dedicated response teams. Assign specialized teams for escalated incidents or teams that can handle these incidents falling into different severity buckets, right? So this helps rapidly mobilize resources for critical SLO breaches. The third thing is to establish the need for clear communication. Maintaining transparent communication with both internal stakeholders of all levels at all times, as well as your external stakeholders when necessary, is very important in order to provide regular updates on the progress of the incident. Also, another important thing is to encourage rapid root cause analysis, right? Ensuring to conduct focused root cause analysis is not an option, but actually a necessity. Early identification of the underlying issue causing the breach is beneficial in making teams aware of the corrective and both the corrective and preventive actions that are needed to be taken. It's also very important to realize that temporary workarounds are necessary. So during an outage, the priority obviously for any team is to put out fires as early as possible and then ensure that the fire actually does not recur. However, reducing mean time to restore services should always be the primary goal, right? So teams need to be encouraged to implement temporary solutions to restore SLO compliance by doing quick and smart thinking, which in turn helps them buy time for actual comprehensive resolution efforts for the longer term fixes. Also, using parallel on-calls and teams where possible for troubleshooting multiple aspects of an incident in parallel is very important, because simultaneously, if you address various components contributing to the breach, everything's just faster, right? Following the chain approach of resolving one issue after another may not always be the most time efficient process for all types of outages. Now, how can you enable quick and efficient incident resolution? By defining clear timeframes. So SLOs establish specific timeframes for incident resolution. Stakeholders and users, as a result, know what to expect in terms of service restoration times. Also, SLO breach severity influences incident priority. So high severity breaches drive quicker resolution efforts. Let's understand what are SLO priorities versus what are incident severities, right? So SLO priorities are predefined levels of service quality that an organization commits to providing to its users or customers through external SLAs. Now, these priorities set acceptable thresholds for performance metrics. Now, these metrics could be response times, uptime, availability, error rates, latency, and so on. SLOs create expectations for service quality, and they guide teams in ensuring consistent and reliable services. Um, on the other hand, incident severity actually reflects how much an incident impacts service quality, user experience, and business operations, right? So, severity levels, however you define within your organization, right? Either as low, medium, high, critical, SEV 1, SEV 2, SEV 3, P0 through P4. So these are determined by factors like user impact, business consequences, and the duration of the incident itself. So as we just discussed, incident response teams allocate resources based on the SLO impact. So SLO-driven incidents receive dedicated attention. Also, closely tracking progress of an SLO-impacted incident is an absolute must, right? So incident resolution progress should be continuously tracked against defined SLO targets. Along with this, there needs to be transparent communication on the status of restoration of the incident as well. I am going to take a moment here to pause and to remind you all to post your questions in the Q&A section. And as Vishal mentioned earlier, our team is eagerly waiting to help answer your questions. All right. So please post your questions. I'll keep it continuing. Right. So teams that have set up SLOs have not done it all yet, right? They have to understand and continuously monitor how their SLOs are actually working out for them. Are they or are they not? So there are a set of standard metrics or measures to help teams figure out how to improve, right? So these include a set of such metrics, but they're not limited to what you are seeing on the screen right now. So let's take a look at them. In terms of compliance, teams need to ask these questions, right? We identified a target SLO that we don't want to breach with best efforts, but how many times did we breach our SLO? Did we breach it? If yes, why? Or was our SLO target very lenient? Can we achieve higher stability by tightening our SLOs, or can we loosen our strings a little bit, right? So in terms of compliance, teams need to be very, very clear that they understand what is the requirement and how it's being fulfilled. Next, with the SLOs that have been set up, keeping in mind good user experience and customer satisfaction, have these teams gotten enough feedback and validation from their users that justify these SLOs? Third, how quickly were SLO impacted incidents resolved? Were the escalation rates too high? Were the established communication channels working out? Were the right teams notified at the right time or not? Also, an important thing that teams need to ask themselves from time to time is, did a particular SLO impacting incident recur multiple times despite multiple fixes? If yes, why? Right? Was the root cause identified and fixed? If not, why? Did proactive monitoring not help here? So again, very primal questions, but this is what is going to help teams figure out if they're doing the right thing or not. Now, with answers to these questions come the next set of steps, right, for improvements and tracking them over time. So, couple of things to note here. So, how efficient were the escalations, the workflows, communication, and collaboration between team members? Can processes and instructions be more precise? Also, teams need to start doing trends analysis in order to determine patterns and metric behaviors if any changes are needed to existing processes and the SLO monitoring that has been set up. However, the main goal should always be to reduce the rate of repeat incidents if that occurs. Now, I hope at this point we all have a decent-ish understanding of SLOs, SLO-driven incident response, proactive incident management by using SLOs, and also measuring the success of these SLO-driven processes. With this, I would like to move on to the next section of this webinar, where I walk you through Squadcast's offering for tracking SLOs and error budget. This is called the SLO Tracker. So we launched this feature roughly about a year and a half ago with the intent of enabling our users and their teams to incorporate SLOs as a means to make incident management and response proactive and efficient, right? While keeping in mind the business impact that these outages cause. So typically, even the smallest of teams tend to have more than just one monitoring tool. And all these tools would generate alerts for a particular downtime or outage at the in the environment, right? So with SLO Tracker, you will be able to aggregate alerts coming in from different sources at your end that could all ultimately point at one single issue at your end. So SLO Tracker allows you to create and track SLIs like availability, uptime, error rate, latency, whatever it is that you're tracking at your end, which affect your SLOs or a particular user journey that needs to be monitored. Now, once these SLIs are created in Squadcast, SLOs can be defined by referring to these SLIs, by associating technical or business services that affect this SLO, defining the target SLO, which is nothing but the maximum desired service availability and the time window during which the SLO needs to be active or monitored, right? So all of this can be done easily via a simple UI. Now, with this, users and teams can easily track error budget consumption, how quickly the allotted error budget is being consumed, and whether this is healthy or unhealthy consumption. Not just tracking, your on-calls and targeted teams also need to be notified in case of SLO breaches or when an SLO is on the verge of being breached, right? So in order to do this, you can also set up custom error budget policies. Although we dislike having too many false positives, they do occur once in a while. And when in such a situation, you would not like the system to account such incidents towards the calculation of error budget, right? So with SLO Tracker, you can quickly mark incidents as false positives and move on. So this helps you ensure that the error budget is being consumed only by actual SLO affecting incidents. Above all, this feature provides centralized dashboards with all the key information one may need, either to work through an outage and understand how the SLOs have performed at that point of time, or for sharing internally with stakeholders to gain perspective on how recent outages have actually impacted business. Right? So with that said, let's actually pick out a use case to understand an actual situation that teams who are looking to start using SLO monitoring tools face. For those who are wondering how much longer this will be, I promise this is my last bit. So here, let's take a look at the use case context. Here, the team is looking to use Squadcast to track SLO affecting incidents and alert their team members upon SLO breaches and post updates on the status page for every SLO breach that they have. They are facing a couple of challenges. We'll go over them one by one. So, incomplete SLO dashboards are affecting decision making abilities and accountability. They are not sure whether the reliance that they have on their SLOs and SLIs ensure adherence to the SLAs that they have promised to their customers. They are not able to calculate the breach impact on the error budget. Also, SLO breaches are not being communicated with either internal or external stakeholders. And because of the absence of streamlined tracking and SLO breach notifications, obviously they are missing out on critical incidents and they don't understand what incidents have to be given what priority, right? So the solution to this would simply be to use SLO tracker, which will help in defining SLIs and Squadcast that already exist in their monitoring environment. Then set up SLOs and targets, track error budget, get notified for breaches, and keep the stakeholders informed of every such breach that has had business impact. So now with this context established, I will now hand this over to Akash, who will demonstrate SLO tracker and how it can be used by this team. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for that, Anisha. All right. So now we're going to see exactly how the SLO tracker works and how it can help organizations basically monitor their own air budget. So SLO tracker, as the name suggests, basically helps you to define your own service level objectives and indicators here onto the platform, which in turn helps you to monitor your own error budget. So what you see right now onto the screen is the SLO overview dashboard. It's like a centralized dashboard, which Anusha was talking about earlier, which gives you an overview of all the SLOs that you have already created, right? And exactly what state they are in. In here, you can see the targets for those SLOs that you have created, the current SLO, whether you are over the stipulated target that you had or you're under it. The tool automatically marks incidents, whether service level objectives, whether they are healthy or needs attention. So what it does is basically figures out, okay, on an average, how much error budget you have been burning. And then if it sees a spike in between, then it automatically marks it as such so that DevOps engineers and SREs can immediately take a look at it and then perform some remediation actions for them. Now, in here, to create your own service level objective, you can click on this button here. Then let's say we would want to create an SLO for website uptime. I can give it a name, choose an SLO owner. Let's say environment would be prod and type is something I don't want to define. Once that is done, click on next, and then we can start to configure our service level objectives. The first step in configuring the SLO would be selecting the services that would be affecting this SLO. So in my case, since I'm creating an SLO for website uptime, APIs could be a service that can affect it. Backend can again be such service, database, of course. Once these services are selected, then you would select the service level indicators that would be affecting this SLO. These indicators can be like availability, saturation, errors, latency, for example. All of these errors can be then defined in here. And then the important step would be to define the target that you're trying to achieve for that particular SLO. So let's say I would want a target of 99.5%. Once the target is defined, you would define the duration in which you're trying to achieve that target. It can either be like a fixed duration, like a fixed fiscal year, or a quarter or two, something that you would want to have. Or you can even select like a rolling period. Right now, I'm going to select a rolling period of 7 days. So in here, I've defined that I want to achieve a target of 99.5% of uptime in a rolling period of 7 days. So since the tool already knows those targets that I've just defined, it will automatically calculate an error budget for me, which is 50 minutes and 24 seconds. Once the error budget is defined, I can click on next and start to define the error budget policy. So in here, I can say that, okay, alert me if error budget is breached or if SLO burn rate is too unhealthy. This is something that I was talking about earlier, where the tool automatically figures out a spike and then tries to mark that SLO as something that needs attention. So this is where you can define that if the SLO needs attention, it can automatically notify you as well. Along with that, false positives are also something that you would not want to see onto your dashboard. So if you're receiving too many false positives from your own infrastructure, then the tool can figure that out and then again notify you that, hey, this is something that is happening. Or if you're completely about to exhaust your own error budget. So we know that we have 50 minutes of error budget, right? So for a rolling period of 7 days, let's say on the second day itself, I lost 45 minutes out of those 50 minutes that I had. That's a very critical issue for me because I just have 5 minutes for the remaining 5 days that I have. So the tool can automatically see that happening and then try to alert different DevOps engineers or a group of SREs. It can also automatically create an incident, which can then again notify all the respective engineers who can then try to take some remediation actions and then salvage the remaining error budget that you want. So let's say I would define in here, notify the SRE squad. Once that is done, simply click on create, and my SLO is created. Now, I'm going to here show you a real-time example of a critical incident coming in from a tool that I've already integrated. And then we'll see exactly how the general flow would be, people getting notified, and then they're figuring out that, okay, this is an SLO impacting incident, and how the SLO tracker comes into the complete incident management workflow. So let me create an incident for you so that you can then begin. All right. We see in here that we just got an incident from New Relic, which already has priority defined as P0. So these priority and the workflow name that is being defined here, these are being done by the tagging rules that Squadcast supports. That's actually an automation layer that the tool has, which can help you add contextual information to important incidents that come in. Click on that incident and you would see all the description of it. Now, the general flow, what would be that an incident would come in, incident gets created, and then automatically the escalation policy is triggered. The escalation policy will then take care of notifying everyone who is supposed to be notified for that particular kind of incident. They would come in here and then acknowledge the incident. Once the acknowledgement happens, they would start to do the initial triaging. After the initial triaging, let's say they figure out that, hey, this is a very critical incident and it is actually an SLO impacting one as well. So they can simply come out of this dashboard, click on affects SLO, choose the SLO that it is affecting, let's say a website uptime that we just created, choose the indicators that might be affecting this SLO. So for me, this time, maybe they can be latency and saturation as well. Click on save, and then the SLO tracker automatically comes into play. So what it will do is basically figure out exactly how much time you're taking to resolve that particular incident. Now, while the triaging is going on, if you would want to keep all of your stakeholders notified, since it's an SLO impacting incident, you can even utilize a status page. So status page basically helps you to keep all of your customers and stakeholders in loop, whether they are internal or external. You can have multiple status pages, and through that, you can then keep them informed that, hey, such an incident has happened and this is what we are doing about it. We can also see under the SLO details that this is the SLO that has been affected, the indicators for it. Once we resolve the incident, now what the SLO tracker will do is that, okay, it will figure out that we took 2 minutes and 3 seconds to resolve that particular incident. Since it already knows the initial error budget that you had, which if you remember, that was 50 minutes, it will reduce this 2 minutes and 3 seconds from that initial 50 minutes that I had, which was my initial error budget. We can even see it in here that it has marked it as such. Now, let's say after the resolution, engineers will also perform a root cause analysis or a post-mortem here onto the tool. And then during that, they figure out that, hey, this was actually not a SLO impacting incident. Somebody must have jumped the gun. So for that, they can simply mark it as such, as a false positive. Once they mark it as a false positive, what will happen is the amount of time that you lost for that particular incident will be regained back. So using this, you can actually make sure that only the incidents that actually impacted at SLO are being marked as SLO impacting. Now, we also have an SLO details dashboard, which shows you like granular details for that particular SLO. So in here, for the platform API SLO, I can see the targets that I'm trying to reach on the top, which is 99.9, the total error budget that I had for it, which is 43 minutes, and then the time duration in which I'm trying to achieve it. Under that, I can see my current metrics, which is 99.98. Great. I'm over my stipulated target. The error budget that I have already consumed, the MTTA, which is the mean time of acknowledgement for the SLO impacting incidents, and also the MTTR, which is very important for the SLO impacting incidents. Yeah. Under the error budget graph, I can see, okay, how much I have remaining, how much I've consumed. I can also see total percentage of SLO affecting incidents that I have received on a whole versus the remaining incidents. If you click on show breakdown, this is where the engineers can see exactly which indicators have been affecting this SLO the most. So in here, we can see that availability and latency has really been the cause of most of our downtime. So once they see that, okay, these are the causes, they can actually then make some changes in their own infrastructure so that these doesn't happen again. It gives them all the necessary information for that. Along with it, they can even see the services that have been associated with this SLO. Scroll a bit further, and then you can see the SLO affecting incidents. Click on false positives, and then you can also see the false positives that you might have received. Earlier, we saw that the incident that we just marked as SLO impacting wasn't an SLO impacting. So we simply marked it as false positive and regained the error budget that we had lost. Under insights, we can see exactly how we have been burning through our error budget. So whether it has been completely uniform across the time period that I'm trying to achieve it, or there have been certain spikes so that I can then try to do some detailed reports on why it happened and what kind of actions I can take so that it doesn't happen again. So yeah, this is how the SLO tracker basically helps organizations to monitor their own error budgets and then establish the SRE best practices. So yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, please do drop them under the Q&A sections, and then we have our PM here, Anusha, who's responsible for this feature, and can then answer those questions in detail. All right, with that, I'm gonna throw it back to Vishal. Over to you, man.
Hey, thank you, Akash. Okay, we'll wait for another couple of minutes for you people to go ahead and put in your questions in here so we can have our panelists answer those questions for you. Okay. Meanwhile, if you're new to Squadcast, let me quickly remind you that Squadcast is an end-to-end incident management and reliability workflow platform. It brings in all the aspects of incident management, on-call scheduling, and SRE workflows under one umbrella. So if you want to try it, make sure you visit our website, sign up for free, and give it a spin. Okay, I once again open this floor for Q&As. Please feel free to put any questions if you have, and we'll ensure that we answer those questions right away. Okay, still no questions. So I believe we are good here. Okay, a quick reminder that this session is being recorded and the copy probably shall be ready soon. Our editors will run their magic on it. And in a couple of days' time, we'll ensure that we email the copy of the webinar for all those who want to have a look at it. Once again, thank you all for joining us for this session. I hope you all had fun, and I wish you a good day ahead. Thank you all.